introducing the Indian Women Scientists Association activities. It's very impressive, and I wish a good luck to the association, which is run by very distinguished scientists, particularly the female scientists of this country. And thank you, Dr. Lalita ji. Thank you, Dr. Jingre, for a very elaborate introduction of mine. I have a very simple introduction. I'm a student of marine geology with a specialization in micropaleontology. And today, I wish to take you to the journey into the cultural heritage of our country. That is the marine archaeology side. And the tool or the vehicle for this journey is the geology. And therefore, I titled the talk today as Excitement of Studying the Lothal and Dhalavira, the Geological Application in Marine Archaeology. Couple of places where we delivered this lecture, many times the question is posed when everybody is looking forward, people are more worried about the future, why we guys are interested in going into the past. And to them, always I answer with this slide, that one who is proud of his or her rich cultural heritage always work hard to maintain the high level of civilization and tries to enhance the living standard of the fellow citizens. Archaeology is not only an academic field or a pure science, but it's having a lot of application. First, I would like to clear the difference between the history and archaeology. Of course, the boundary line is little blurred, but history is the written record of the development in that country, the ruling composition. And then the archaeology is beyond the written history. And we Indians, we have a very limited sense of the history of country. Before this building a very monumental building, which is also the UNESCO World Heritage Site. How many of us were aware of this? This is the Rani Chiva, or the Queen Sister Well, built in 1050 in Gujarat. Very few people in our country knew about it. And recently, but things are changing. Now recently, Dhalavira and Ramappa is a temple recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site. But you can just compare the size of India with the UK. Less than 15,000 monuments and heritage structures are legally protected in India, a fraction of the 6 lakh protected in UK. This is the situation, and we need to work, and it is our duty, everyone's duty, to bring the rich cultural heritage to the knowledge of a common man in this area, in our country. And unless we know, we cannot tell to the other people. Archaeology also have a lot of potential for the earning. It's economic side of the archaeology, that is the tourism. Now, if you see the situation of tourism in our country, the maximum number of the visitors and the revenue, it is confined to only few monuments. Taj Mahal, Agra Fort, Qutub Minar, Fatehpur Sikri, and Red Fort. Except Qutub Minar, which is about 800 years old, rest of the monuments are less than 500 years. And recently, Amitabh Kant, Chief Executive Officer of the Niti Aayog, commented, our built heritage can be leveraged for the economic gain through tourism dollars, as well as opportunities for craftsmen and local communities. But in India, what we projected so far, mostly the Mughal monuments.
We have lost you, Dr. Nigam.
Better monuments and better sites, archaeological sites like Mahabalipuram, Konark, Khajuraho, Ellora, they have a very little tourist business. Not because the sites are inferior, because they have not been projected. So we need to bring this to the knowledge of everybody. Out of this, actually, if you see, the Gujarat so far have 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Champaner near Pavagadh, Rani Ki Vav in Patan, and historical city of Ahmedabad. Now the Dholavira is also added to this. I don't know what is happening. Why does it's going in an auto mode? Now, if you see in the recent budget lecture, our finance minister of our country, so Nirmala Sitharaman, she told that India is going to give a lot of importance to the cultural heritage, and she mentioned the 3 important sites. One is Rakhi Gadi, which is near Delhi here. The Dholavira, which is in Kutch, it is here, and the Lothal, it is here. And they say that all these 3 pieces are not the piece of a land, but they represent a cultural, which is very rich cultural heritage of the India. Rakhi Gadi, I will not take up, but I will take up Dholavira and Lothal today. In Lothal, at Lothal, now government has proposed to build a maritime national museum, which is going to be chaired by Dr. Vasant Shinde, the former Vice Chancellor of Deccan College, Pune. And being an oceanographer, I am much more interested in, which comes under our domain, is the Dholavira and Lothal only. Of course, Rakhi Gadi also is now even the bigger site than Mohenjo-daro and Lothal, which is near the Delhi, but that's some other day. I will just tell you in brief about Lothal and Dholavira, and then I will go why it is so exciting to study these sites. The Lothal is, you can see here, this is the Saurashtra, and this is the Lothal in Gulf of Khambhat. It is about 103 kilometers from the capital city of Gandhinagar and 78 kilometers from Ahmedabad. This is about 12 kilometers away from the present coastline, and it's few meters above the present sea level. I don't know how many of you have seen Lothal, but Lothal was discovered in 1954 by Dr. S.R. Rao, and it became a very important site afterwards. The reason is the systematic study of archaeology in India started about 1920 when Mohenjo-daro and Harappa was discovered as Indus Valley civilization. After the partition, we lost both the sites to Pakistan. And after that, there were the efforts by Indian archaeologists to have certain sites discovered and excavated within the territory of India. And Lothal was one of the very major sites which was excavated in 1954. And this is about 4,500-year-old site. This is what I was telling in the beginning of my lecture. We have the archaeological sites with a lot of things to display, which is more than 500 years. But these sites are not given their dues. So Lothal is one. The other one is the Dholavira. Dholavira, this is the run of the Kutch. It's a Khadar island. this is the Bhuj, and you can say this is the route to reach to Dhalavira. There are say about 120 acre sites, and this site recently has been declared by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. And after that, there is a lot of coverage in the media. Even I have been interviewed for a couple of TV channels on that. But till then, it was not that much known within our country. I will tell you why this site is so important. And this site was perhaps established somewhere about 5.5 thousand years back, the Dhalavira. The Dhalavira and the Lothal, they are these two important archaeological sites, and destiny of these two coastal towns were controlled by the fluctuation in sea level. And therefore, they became a prime source for the marine archaeology. Marine archaeology is a rather young branch of the archaeology. And it was started in 1981 by Dr. S.R. Rao, late Dr. S.R. Rao. Dr. S.R. Rao was in Archaeological Survey of India. And after his retirement, he came to NIO. And he expressed his desire to establish a marine archaeology. Why so? Because he excavated Lothal while he was in the Archaeological Survey of India. And according to him, he discovered the first ever naval dockyard discovered in the world. And he wanted to pursue the role of sea in shaping the destiny of the coastal towns. And he found the National Institute of Oceanography Goa is the best place where he can start. He is another classical example. Most of the people, we retired from the job, we stay home, or we have been forced to stay home. But Dr. Rao, after retirement, he started an entirely new branch. And thanks to the scientific management at NIO, the National Institute of Oceanography, who could visualize like Dr. Qasim, Dr. Siddiqui, Dr. Ben Desai, Jingle, who accepted Dr. S.R. Rao, and with just 20,000 grant from the INSA, he started. He started with the East Coast, and then later he shifted his interest to Dwarka, and he has been credited for discovering the submerged Dwarka, which is under the sea at about 6 to 8 meter water depth. But today we are not going for the Dwarka, but we are going for the Lothal, from where Dr. S.R. Rao's journey started with the marine archaeology. Later, this gave a lot of publicity to NIO. He chose NIO because all branches of science are available in NIO. Whether it is survey, whether physics, geology, biology, chemistry, any branch you can think of science, it's have a representation in NIO. So mostly the geologists and the survey people have supported Dr. S.R. Rao. An entire new unit finally was established in NIO in 1990. And after that, we have taken up many more projects, which I will list into the last. So this is starts the journey into the marine archaeology in India, where we fit into it. When Dr. Jingle was introducing, she told me about my background. I'm basically a geologist. I use the microfossils, which I will show you later, to reconstruct the past planet. So archaeology may be subtly defined as a systematic study of antiquities as a means to reconstruct the past. Whereas we use the marine sediments to reconstruct the past. I will explain to you how we can use the marine sediment to reconstruct the past. So archaeology reconstruct the past, geology or marine geology also reconstruct the past. And since the common aim of oceanography and archaeology lies in the illuminating of the past, it is obvious to bring a coherence between the two. So as a geologist, we started contributing towards the marine archaeology. I will tell you how we use the marine sediment for reconstructing the past. See, if this is the land and this is the ocean, the sediments eroded by the river are brought into the sea, as well as the wind blow the sediment that also come into the sea. Now this sediment comes and deposited. Actually, it is a very good animated slide, but I'm afraid of using the full screen. Okay. So the sediments, as well as the organisms, the microorganisms, after their death, their hard part also getting settled year by year, layer by layer. So you can take your ship, collect the core, and start studying this all layers one by one. You put radiocarbon dates on it. So you can say when the climate was cold, warm, sea level was high or low. All sort of past history of that area can be reconstructed by studying this layered sediment at the bottom of the sea. Now, these microfossils, they became the prime tool, a prime source for reconstructing the past. I will show you some of these microfossils. Beautiful. They are less, I will tell you some of these properties of them. They are phylum Protozoa. They are less than a millimeter normally in size. They have a hard test, which is, we call it test. Now, these organisms are exclusively marine organisms. Please remember this, they are exclusively marine organisms. There are more than about 40,000 species of these organisms are there. More than 2,000 species has already been identified from our water, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, which has been used in a couple of PhD theses. Now, they are very beautiful. There are two types of they are named as foraminifera, but I could see the Jingle was fumbling to pronounce full foraminifera. So in short, we call them forams. So here onwards, I will also use the word forams. So you can also remember the foraminifera nickname is forams. Now, they are very sensitive to the environmental changes. Slight change in the environment bring a lot of change in the population. And now you can see the beautiful structures of the foraminifera. I just put up some 3 slides to show. And if you think of taking the name of this foraminifera, for example, this species, each one is having a name. This is Punculocculina pseudo-reticulata. We paleontologists or we biologists are very fond of giving long names for this species, each one of them. And because of their sensitivity, they have been used in a variety of applications. So these are the paleoclimate, paleo means past, study the past climate. We reconstruct the past climate. We use them for sediment transport studies, which is engineering application for stability of offshore pipelines, like oil pipeline or sewage discharge pipelines. Their classical or textbook use is in petroleum exploration. Each petroleum company appoints some of the paleontologists. They have been also used to reconstruct the past monsoonal variation. How monsoon rain has changed in past 2,000 years, we can find out by the studying the foraminifera. And we have discovered a 77-year cyclicity in the rainfall. This was a work by Dr. Nilay Khare, who was my PhD student and now with the Ministry of Earth Sciences as Scientist G. They can be also used to get an idea about the fisheries. This is our model area was Kerala mud bank studies, how fisheries is possible even during the monsoon months when fishes stop all over the country, coastal areas. There are a lot of commercial application is also there. Then we can find out the records of paleo tsunami also. We can also find out how sea level has fluctuated in the past. and also the marine archaeology. And in the recent sediments, we use them for pollution monitoring, and this is a wonderful method. And today I will take up these two together, the sea level changes and the marine archaeology. Because archaeology can be anywhere else, but marine archaeology is normally governed by the sea level changes. So let us see how the marine archaeology and sea level can be done together. Now, I will start with the Lothal. I have already told you about the location of the Lothal. It was discovered in 1954 by Dr. S.R. Rao. Those who have seen, they can remember this place. This is a well at Lothal. These are the ancient seals which have been discovered, excavated. These are the warehouse of the Lothal. This is about the burial procedures. It's a twin burial. It's a very, the lot of interpretation has been given for this one. And this is the boundary of the Lothal town. And here you can see this is structure, tank-like structure. And this structure became the controversial things. I will just give you here. This is a tank-like one. And soon after the excavation, this became controversial. The group of archaeologists, they say this is the dockyard. Now remember the location. It is 12 kilometers away from the sea, couple of the meter above the present sea level, whereas an age of this is about 4,500 years. The other group says that, no, it is not a dockyard. It is a freshwater irrigation tank. I was taken to this site in 1984 when Physical Research Laboratory Ahmedabad organized a paleoclimate workshop, and they took us for sightseeing to this. And after seeing it, I heard the conversation between the two scientists. One said it doesn't look like a dockyard. The other said Dr. SRO will kill if he come to know. Then I asked them what is the problem, and they explained the controversy. And then I thought then and there, why this controversy is on for so many years? Hello. Can you put off your mics, please, those who are listening to it?
Please mute yourself.
Okay. So we collected some samples. I see this problem is were discussed in various conferences, monographs, books, for 40 years among archaeologists. This is a very lively problem with the dockyard or a freshwater, and how they were arguing. See, when this was excavated, few stones, for example, were discovered during the excavation here. Now, one group of scientists, which is led by Dr. Ross, said these stones were the anchor stones. And since we got the anchor, it means boats used to come here, and this was the document. Now, he was supported by Martin Wheeler and Dr. Lele, V.B. Lele. Whereas the other school used the same stone. They say that this is a counterweight to lift the water for irrigation. Therefore, it was an irrigation tank. And the archaeologists were arguing with the archaeologists for 40 years without coming to a conclusion. You can see in the lab, if you go to the net or in the library, you will get the books on it about the Lothal. Now, this group was led by Professor Sankalia, who was the chairman of the Deccan College of Pune, supported by Dr. Shah, Leshnik, Air Service, British archaeologists of that time. Everyone joined this controversy. When we visited the site, then we are surprised. Dockyard and freshwater irrigation tank can be decided within a day or two. What I did, I collected the samples from at the bottom. And we brought it to our lab. And when we analyze in our lab, we found the beautifully well-preserved foraminifera. Now, I told you foraminifera are exclusively marine organisms. So it means this tank-like body was filled with the marine water and nobody irrigated the land with the saline water. And therefore, this has tilted the argument in favor of the dockyard. And if it is true, then we must be very proud of our cultural heritage that India has the oldest dockyard ever discovered in the world. So this was a very, very important. And when I presented this paper into the International Marine Archaeology Conference, this became a very darling paper of that time. It came in all the media and everywhere because we solved the 40-year-old controls. And this is another example that the interdisciplinary approach in the science should be followed. This problem was not solved for 40 years because it was argued by archaeologists with the archaeologists. Had there been any geologists in their team or nearby, it would have been solved 40 years back. But few questions remain to be answered. If this is a dockyard, have you seen ever any dockyard which is on the land, 12 kilometers away from the sea, few meters above the present sea level? So this was further supported by one Dr. Khadkekar, who was in Agarkar Research Institute, Pune, who has found out the buried channel, which said this was connected to the Sabarmati River, and through the high tide, the Sabarmati River was connected to the sea. But still, it is very far off from the sea. It is possible only if sea level was higher than today. That time, this dockyard was connected to the sea, and when sea level has gone lower, the connection got cut off, and therefore it became out of use and it became an extinct city. Whether sea level was higher that time, we have to have a knowledge of the sea level of the past. I remember in my school days, we were taught, Samudra apni maryada nahi todta. Recently, when our Prime Minister taken the Prime Minister of China to Mahabalipuram and he wrote a poem, there also he says that Samudra apni maryada nahi todta. But as a geologist, as a oceanographer, we know that sea has never been constant. You can think of that where the mighty Himalaya stands today. Millions of years before, that area was the Tethys Sea. I'm not going to that much old. I'm just concerned with the last 15,000 years, which is say that roughly Holocene period, and which has very important for the human race. Now, many places, the sea level record shows sometimes sea level was even higher than today, and sometimes it was lower than today. Of course, this is very small, but many of this curve has been generated by foreigners for their respective seas. There was not much record available for Indian region, which we can use it to interpret the marine archaeological records. So we started generating the sea level records. How to generate sea level record? When sea level was higher than today, all such evidences you must see on the land. This is an example here in the Goa. This, you can see this notch here. This shows that sometimes sea level was here, and that's why it eroded this rock. And now the sea level is somewhere here. This is in South Goa. There's a cave is there, sea cave. This cave was done by the sea at its level, but now there is no sea here. This material, which is eroded form, it is to be deposited somewhere, which is in modern environment, you can say beaches. And if those who have been to Goa, if you come from Goa airport towards Panjim, you get this shelly bed. So this material is deposited here, which also contains foraminifera, and when we have dated it, it comes something around 6,000 years. So these are the evidences that sometimes sea level was even higher than today. When sea level was lower than today, you can see it is towards the India. 60 to 90 meter water depth, if you see the sediment, it contained the foraminifera or the forams, and if you date them with radiocarbon date, it comes to about 10,000 years. And they are very shallow water indicator fauna. So how this older fauna of shallow water at such a depth? It was only possible when sea level was lower than today. The shallow water fauna used to live. And when sea level has gone up, it left behind the sediment, this fauna. So this was the lower. Similarly, this is a Praveen Hendricks thesis work, who is now teaching into the Xavier. He's the head of department, probably a geology department. Similar story we can see towards the Myanmar. This is a work of Dr. Rajni Pancha. Now she is teaching in Pune University. In a simple way, how to generate this record, you can see from. I think I will try, because without okay, I will try to show it, because this is an animated slide. Yesterday it was working, but today we have some problem. See, these are the shallow water organisms, if you see. And if any time, see, when sea level was somewhere here, they used to live here. And when sea level started going up, they kept migrating. And with the migration of the sea, finally they reach here. Now you can date them with radiocarbon. So date versus depth. Date versus depth, if you plot, you will get the sea level fluctuations. Now we have summarized all such records. And this is the sea level curve for last 15,000 years. Very interesting. Around 15,000 years back, sea level was 100 meters lower than today. Friends, you can think of, if you lower the present sea level by 100 meters, how much area will be exposed? You will have to go miles and miles into the sea to reach the ancient coastline. Then the sea level started going up, and something around near 7,000 years. It has crossed the present sea level. It has gone above the present sea level. That means after 7,000 years, a lot of the coastal areas of today must be under the sea. And then after that, around 3,500 years back, it came even lower than today. Dwarka was somewhere here. Then again, around 2,000 years, sea level has gone up, and then up to this level. So this is a history of last 15,000 years, how sea level has gone up and down. When I was showing Lothal to you, I told you it is 4,500 years old. A flourishing port town of that time, which was having its trade with the Gulf countries. And you can see now 4,500 years back, sea level was higher. So when sea level was higher than today, Lothal was connected to the sea. And when sea level has gone down, the connection got cut off, and it became an abundant city, became a property of the marine archaeologists. So this is one example what sea level can do when it goes down. Now, another important phenomena of the changes in coastal towns' destiny because of sea is Dholavira. Dholavira is a run of Kutch here and Khadar belt, and you can see Lothal is here. This is in this Gulf of Khambat or Gulf of Cambay, and Dholavira here, it is in Gulf of Kutch. And there are many other small sites of archaeological importance which has been discovered into the Gujarat region. Now, if you go to Dholavira, you can see these are the ancient houses. This is a stone which was at the entry gate of the Dholavira town. These are the houses. These are the square houses. This is the entry gate. These are the ancient structures. This is our team, which there is a small museum by Archaeological Survey of India. And this was the team which has worked into the Dholavira. Now this town The Dholavira became very famous site, world famous site for its excellent water conservation system. And it's been even studies by the many engineers about how to conserve water. Even it is a good example for today. And you can see this is a tank, like there are many tanks of this nature, and you can see the stair is going down. Even when water is less, you can reach down. And many of these tanks were interconnected. Till 2016, this site was mostly famous for this reason. It's a good site. After the Harappa and Rakhigarhi, this is the biggest site which we have discovered within our Indian territory. This is the only site which gives such an excellent water conservation system. But after that, when we started visiting this site, we realized that something more can be done. The site was first been noticed by Dr. Jagatpati Joshi ji way back in 1967. Then Dr. R.S. Bisht excavated this site 8990 to 2004 or 5, and he has been awarded Padma Shri for the excavation of Dholavira. And 2016, we published a paper explaining a very new feature. I will tell you what it is. See, this is this town of Dholavira, situated between two very minor rivers. You can see here. Bansar and Manhar, these rivers. These are the water conservation sites, which I showed you example first. This is the citadel, or the most, you can say, VVIP area. This is a Berry, which is a bureaucratic area. This is the middle town. This is a lower town, and this is ceremonial ground. The important thing is this wall. The outer wall is about 5 to 6 meters thick. But the citadel wall, can you think of it? How much thick wall it is? 18 meters. This most VIP area to be protected by 18-meter thick wall. I will show you that enlargement of this. You can see here. This is an entry through this wall to the town, and you can see the wall. 18-meter thick wall. I remember when Dr. Bisht came to NIO and I asked this question, sir, why 18-meter thick? He says, perhaps for the protection. Then I said, sir, protection against what? He said, you find out. 2 times it happened. And when anybody was coming, we were asking this question. There could be the 3. See, protection against the animal. For them, you don't need 18-meter thick wall. For 1 meter, 2 meter is good enough. It is protection. If it is a protection against flood, this is the water is starved area. That's why such an elaborate water conservation system has been made. So this is not a flood affected area. Then it is protection against the enemy. So 5,000, 6,000 years back, what were the ammunition of the enemies? Bows and arrows. For that, you don't have to make an 18-meter thick wall. Because the cannon came, this gunpowder was discovered much later. So, and if you see all other forts of India, I have listed some of them. Mahendragarh, Jodhpur Fort, Delhi, Agra, Jaisalmer, Golconda, none of them are having this much thick wall. Even the world famous, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world, the China wall, it's only 6 to 7 meters thick. Then what could be the reason of this 18-meter thick wall? We knew, me and my student, Dr. S.K. Chaturvedi, for his PhD, which is published in Geomarine Letters, Springer publication. On the west coast of India, the Makran coast is the only coast where this Dholavira is situated, which is a tsunami prone area. So we and we have reported a tsunami which is 8,000 years back. It means 5,000 years back, when Dholavira people were building their city, they were aware that this area is tsunami prone area. But because of its strategic location, they have to build the city there. But they wanted to protect their most guarded area, and therefore they built a 18-meter thick wall to protect. And therefore, we can say that ancient Indians were aware of the tsunami protection measures. This is the world's oldest evidence of tsunami protection measures, which is in our. This is another monument about which we should be very proud of it. And we published this paper. Now, some more evidences to support our finding. See, some of the people, okay, Dr. Bish has noticed that the Eastern Gate wall was a tilted wall. You can see the enlargement, and which has been reinforced. Now, friends, that we interpret anything based on our existing knowledge. Most of the people who were trying to interpret, none of them thought that this in terms of the tsunami protection. Most of them were the experts in tectonics, earthquake. And they say maybe because of the earthquake, this area was destroyed, and this can be seen with the tilted wall. Our submission was, see, earthquake hit from the bottom. It can destroy the wall, and it can be only rubbles can be seen. But if tsunami hit horizontally, if you hit here, you will get a wall like this. So this is another thing, that Dholavira was hit by tsunami, and therefore this thick wall was also constructed to protect themselves from the tsunami. So some more questions remain to be answered. Whether this 18-meter thick wall could protect them, or whether is there any other evidence of tsunami in this area? Because we gave earlier the circumstantial evidence. This is a tsunami prone area. Okay, so what we did a survey in the Middletown area. And this is a GPR work, ground penetrating radar. This ground penetrating radar is, you can run over the surface. This is very important and new instrument which earlier used by the civil engineers. We started using it for the marine archaeology. See, whether it's Dholavira or Lothal. In Lothal, only 10% area, they say it has been excavated because it's very expensive. And you don't know what is buried inside. You get something or not. But here, when you run GPR, you can find out what is below. And this is a recording unit. So you can just go on in a cross pattern. You can do the GPR survey. So we did this GPR survey in this area. And our record shows very interesting. See, this is the surface. And this is about 2.5 to 3 meter thick sediment, and which are not having any layer. Normally, if you cut any section, whether river section or marine section, when sediments are depositing seasonally, they leave the layers. You go to the beach, cut any section, you will get like this. You go to sand dunes, you will get a section like this. But if you bring a truckload of sand and dump it somewhere, you will not have any layer. They say the thick 3 meter thick sediments is a one-time deposit. From there, such a huge sediments came and which got deposited. This is one-time deposit. It is possible by two ways. Either river brought these sediments and deposited it, or sediments came from the seaside and they deposited. So our survey indicates, so what we did with the permission from the Archaeological Survey of India, this is very interesting. When we wanted to dig this trench in this area, we were told that you will not get the permission. With a lot of persuasion, we got the permission from Archaeological Survey of India, and we are thankful to Dr. Akish Tiwari, who gave us the permission to dig this area. So we have done a trench, And you can see these are the sediments which is deposited. He is Dr. Lawson, who is our GPR expert. And we wanted to confirm the sediment from where it came. And there is the Dr. Rupal Dubey, who recently got 2019, she got the Young Scientist Award. And you can see from here, we collected the sediment to check whether what type of sediment there. And to our surprise, these sediments also contain foraminifera. I told you in the beginning, and these are the very simple application only. If river brought this sediment, these organisms have no business to be there. But if sediment are brought from the seaside, definitely the marine organisms shell came along with the sediment and they are deposited. It shows that tsunami has affected this area. So tsunami has crossed this wall, it means. But still we don't know whether the tsunami could cross this 18-meter thick wall or not, because tsunami signature, we got it here. But this have a certain socio-economical implications as well. See, the VIP area was protected by 18-meter wall. And this area was a less thick wall, and they have been destroyed. A common man, when they could not survive, probably the VIP area could not survive. And after a couple of times, this area settlement, resettlement, destruction, resettlement was there, but they could not survive. So unless there are common man around, a VIP cannot survive. No city can survive without a common people around. And this is also indicate that the world's oldest evidence of tsunami protection measures are within our territory. That is at Dholavira, and therefore Dholavira becoming world famous. We did a press conference in 2017-16, which is covered by 300 sites. On the internet, if you give Dholavira and tsunami, you will get the details of that. So sea level has, you can see that when sea level fluctuate, it causes or it impacts on the coastal town. And this sea level fluctuation not only has affected Dholavira, Lothal here or the Dholavira here, it has also explained the world's oldest urban settlement about 9.5 thousand years back at 30 to 40 meter water depth. India today, in year 2000, brought out a special issue, the world's oldest civilization, that is here. It was possible to have a city here because sea was not meeting the land here, but it was meeting the land here, which is now presently under 30 to 40 meter water depth. This is about Ram Setu. This is about Dholavira and Lothal. This is about Dwarka and Mahabalipuram. This is about the Bed Dwarka. So the sea level fluctuation can explain many of the findings of which were the controversial problem in marine archaeology, but with the help of geology and sea level changes, with the help of foraminifera, microorganisms, and the GPR, we could settle this old controversies. Friends, actually the sea level curve we have generated for another purpose. That is our project was about the global warming. The global warming going to have a consequences. It is going to accelerate the rise in the sea level, changes in monsoon pattern, increase the intensity and frequency of the storms and fisheries. Let us see the first one. Sea level is likely to go up. That's what one of the very warning of the global warming. And the effects can be seen even now. The words warm up to climate change. This is by one of our friends who contributed towards the IPCC report, which got the Nobel Prize to India. And they'll say this sea is underwater, the Panjim next. Friends, if we don't take enough measure to reduce our emission, if we don't take enough measures to stop the climate warming, some of the present day flourishing coastal towns tomorrow will become the property of future marine archaeologists. maybe after a few hundred years, somebody will be feasting on the Panchi and telling that this was the coastal town, probably that time capital of the Goa. So let us not wait for that time. Take enough precautions to safeguard the global warming. Archaeology is showing you the example. If sea level go up and down, how it can impact the ancient towns. Thank you very much. This is a small step to unravel the past in order to illuminate the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nigam.